Hi, thank you so much for joining me as we talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, the VA pension. And before we get into the program, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Marcy Johnson, and I am an estate planning and elder law attorney. I have offices here in Dallas and also in Arizona. So I'm licensed in both states. And the name of our firm is called the Johnson Firm. And what makes my firm unique, I think, compared to others, is that we're a family firm. My partner is also my dad, and his name is Richard Johnson, and he is board certified estate planning, and I do elder law. And so a lot of people don't know what elder law means. They think it just deals with old people, and or they interchange it with estate planning. And so to kind of give you an idea of what I do is, I help stressed out families who are worried about how they're going to pay for long-term care. I help them preserve and protect those assets so that they can get on governmental programs to help pay for that care. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit this morning. But before we get into it, I know I'm going to be throwing a lot of numbers your way. And so I want to go ahead and tell you that everything I'm saying today, it can be found in this little booklet that you can download for free on my website, which is there at www.johnsonfirmpc.com. And you go to the link, I think it says download my books. And this one is called Helping Veterans Pay for Long-Term Care, the VA Pension. So everything I say today, you can find in here. So no need to write down a whole lot of notes because I know we're going to go pretty fast, but I do have a lot of numbers to share with you, and I don't expect you to remember them. So this is there for your convenience. I've also got some other books that you're more than welcome to download. Some are just on estate planning in general, but also on Texas Medicaid. So I do have a lot of clients with Medicaid benefits as well. So feel free to use that as a resource and go to our website and download those books for your reference. So let's go ahead and get into the presentation here today. The VA pension, what is it? I am so amazed that so many people have never heard of the VA pension. It's like a best well-kept secret. And so let me go into that. What is it? So it's a program aimed specifically at seniors, and it's to help pay for their long-term care costs. It's tax-free money. And if you meet the requirements to get this pension, you're looking at, you could get between $25,000 and $30,000 tax-free every year for the rest of your life. Now, do you know anyone who might be interested in that? I know I would be. And so you don't have to be career military to get this benefit. And you're not limited to using VA hospital and doctors to get this benefit. You can get your care anywhere that you want. It's just a deposit into your bank account like Social Security, and it's tax-free. Now, you may have heard of the VA disability compensation program. That's where if you know someone who is disabled, their injury or illness can be related back to their time when they served during the military, they can get a disability rating, say 10%, 20%, 50%, 100%, and they get money for that disability. This has nothing to do with service-connected disability. Your illnesses or injuries or any ailments you have do not have to relate back in any shape or form to your time of service. So why would the VA provide tax-free money? Well, it's because long-term care, is expensive. So just how expensive is it? That's what this slide's about. Now, I don't know if in this presentation where my picture is, so it may be covering up part of the slide. If it is, I'm sorry. But what this slide says is, how much does long-term care cost? And this is just a reality check. We just want to make sure we're all on the same page, that long-term care really is expensive. I took this information from Genworth, did a study back in 2020. They went all around the country and surveyed the cost of care in those areas. And you are more than welcome to go to the website, Google it, and choose any place in the nation that you want to look into, and it'll give you the cost of care. So this is the average. I chose Dallas, the cost of care in Dallas for 2022. And you will see, let's look at nursing home first. So for nursing home, the average cost of nursing home is $5,796 a month, which comes out to be about $69,551 a year. Assisted living is a little bit less than that. That's $4,321 a month, which comes out to about $51,850 a year. You got your adult daycare, it's about $1,500. Home health aide is someone who actually comes in your house. That's a little bit more. Now, I will tell you, based on my personal experience here in Dallas and the clients that I serve, remember, these are averages. I have seen in the North Dallas area, these are about $500 low. I'm seeing closer to, $6,200 for nursing home, more like $5,000 for assisted living. So these are averages. You may find some that are a little high, and you may find some that are a little low, but this is basically what you're looking at paying for long-term care in the Dallas area. So, when you look at these numbers, now remember, this is just for one person. So if you're married and you've got a loved one going into skilled nursing, a nursing home, and you're going to be paying, let's just say $6,000 a month. Remember, if you've got a healthy spouse still at home, they have all of their household expenses and upkeep at the home. So, add another couple of $1,000s to that, instead of paying, $70,000 a year for skilled nursing, add another, say, $30,000, and you may be spending, more like $100,000 a year to keep up your lifestyle. And that can add up really fast. Even if you're just paying $50,000 through assisted living a year, if you've got a loved one still healthy at home, they've got their own expenses, this could easily be closer to $80,000. So, I ask you to think about your nest egg, what you've spent your entire life building up. And if we look at these numbers and what would happen if you need long-term care, if you had to chip away at your life savings, $60, $70, $80, $100,000 a year, how long would it last? It may not. For most Americans, you may not be able to last very long. And again, this slide isn't meant to scare you. It's just meant to be a conversation starter, because this is a really big deal. And we need to figure out, what are we going to do if we have this situation? So you've got a couple of options. How are we going to pay for this long-term care? Really, I see that there's really three main ways. You can private pay, which is that slide we were just looking at. You can pay out of your own assets and savings, and and you probably will to some extent, but realistically, how long can you keep that up? What if you spend all the money on one spouse, that, and leave nothing for the healthy spouse if they ever need care later on? That could be a problem. So maybe you pay, but how long can you pay? Maybe you're fortunate enough to have children or other family members who have offered to give you a place to go, or pay for any care that you need. And when I hear families offer this, it's wonderful if you have it, but again, a lot of people just don't realize how involved the cost of care really is. And is it really fair to your family. But if private pay isn't an option, or we know that even if it is an option, we don't want or can't pay for very long, what other choice do we have? Well, you can look at buying long-term care insurance. If you have long-term care insurance, when I always ask client, or when I do these workshops, I ask clients if they have, or potential clients, if they have long-term care insurance, and not many people raise their hand. Because the overall consensus, the rumor out there, is that long-term care insurance is expensive. And really it is expensive. I mean, you can easily have an annual premium of $6,000 or $7,000 a year easily. And the rule with insurance, the joke is, when's the best time to buy insurance? Yesterday. And so if you can't buy insurance, if you've already got a medical condition in which you're uninsurable, long-term care insurance may not be an option. But like I said, it is expensive. So maybe you can't afford the $6,000 to $7,000 premium a year. But it's all relative, right? Because if you pay $6,000 to $7,000 a year for your premium, but when you look at a nursing home is $6,000 a month. I've seen memory care facilities closer to $8,000 to $10,000 a month. Maybe that long-term care insurance isn't as expensive as it may have once looked. So, if you're at all interested in long-term care, I highly encourage you to check it out. I don't sell long-term care insurance, but definitely it's worth seeing what all your options are. But if long-term care insurance isn't a viable option for us, we don't want to pay, or we know we can't pay for very long, what other choice do we have? Well, that's when we've got to look at applying for some sort of governmental program. And the three main governmental programs out there are Medicare, Medicaid, and the Veterans Pension. And I have Medicare up there really just as a reminder for me to tell you that you don't count on Medicare. It's really just an insurance program. It's there to offset the cost of hospital stays, co-pays to doctor visits, help pay prescription drugs, but it's not meant for residential long-term care assistance. Now, if you had a hip replacement, for example, and the doctor said you need to go to rehab, and it was held at a skilled nursing facility, you may have gone, or you could go to a skilled nursing facility, and Medicare would pick up the tab for 20 days, 100% coverage. And then after day 20, between day 21 and 99, it's a prorated rate of what Medicare will pay. But after day 100, you're on your own. So you would be private paying. So even though Medicare may assist in small, short-term acute instances, it's not there for long-term care, residential living. So I'm sorry if you were counting on that, but it's not an option. So the next two options that we look at is Medicaid and VA pension. And I do a complete workshop just on Texas Medicaid, so I'm not going to spend much time talking about it today, although a lot of the VA rules now mirror some Medicaid rules. So we'll talk about it a little bit. But if you want to talk specifically about Medicaid, with Medicaid really for long-term care, your health needs need to rise to the level of needing skilled nursing. So if you don't need skilled nursing, Medicaid may not even be an option for you anyway, but I'd be glad to talk to you more about that one-on-one at a different time. But today I want to focus on specifically the VA pension. So let's get into that. So as I said, the VA pension is tax-free money, and it's a program, and the purpose of it was to keep veterans or their surviving spouses from becoming impoverished paying for their long-term care costs. And so who gets this pension. Who's eligible for the pension? Well, it's a veteran who has wartime service. And we're going to break these down in more detail in just a minute. So a veteran with wartime service, or it could be the surviving spouse whose spouse who passed away was a veteran and they met the wartime service. So when is it available for a veteran or surviving spouse? It's when they reach age 65 or older, and we have to show that they need some sort of assistance paying for long-term care. And again, why is it available? It's available because we're showing the VA that the income that we bring in is less than we're paying out in our medical expenses. And when you look at our overall assets, we don't have enough to sustain those payments long-term. So how do you apply? You talk to a VA accredited attorney like myself, or you file a claim, and then you file a claim showing that you're eligible. And so we're going to break these down into more detail. So who is a veteran for VA pension? Now, as we talk about the eligibility requirements, so what I want to talk about is how you become, what the requirements are, the rules, and then if you don't meet those rules, things that we can do maybe to qualify. And the way I describe the eligibility requirements are tests. Now, if you Google VA pension, you won't see in any of the VA's literature tests. This is my language that I use. I just think it's easier to explain it to families. So the first test you got to pass is what's called a service test. And the service test, we've got to show that the veteran served 90 days active duty. One of those days was during a time of war, and they were discharged anything other than dishonorable. So either an honorable, a general, or a medical discharge. Now, the veteran, even though there was a wartime, we had one day during wartime, that does not mean the veteran had to physically see combat. It just means that somewhere in the world, the US was at war. So let's go over what are those specific dates of war. So we've got, for World War II, December 7th, 1941 through December 31st, 1946. The Korean War was June 27th, 1950 through January 31st, 1955. The Vietnam War was August 5th, 1964 through May 7th, 1975. However, Vietnam is a little weird in that they extended the time. So if you were actually in the country of Vietnam, they extended the dates. So if you were in Vietnam between November 1st, 1955 through August 4th, 1964, those dates would count if you served in country during that time. So Vietnam has two different distinct areas. But between August 5th, 1964 and May 7th, 1975, you didn't have to actually be in Vietnam. It was just during that time. You could have served, in San Diego or somewhere else, but those are the times of war. For the Persian Gulf, the dates are August 2nd, 1990, and technically it's through the present because the VA has not declared the actual end date for the Persian Gulf. Now, when I talk about the VA pension today and the requirements, I'm really just talking about World War II, Korean War, and the Vietnam, because most of those veterans are going to be over 65. Persian Gulf is usually, they're still under 65, but also their requirements for service are different. They have to serve 24 months continuous. So it's not 90 days, one day during wartime, it's different. So just for sake of clarity, when I'm talking about wartime today, we're focusing on the top 3 wars, okay? Now, if you don't know when you or your loved one served, we need to look at the discharge papers. A lot of times those are called the DD-214. That's the number on the form that gives all the information that we're looking for. So it says DD-214. I believe though in World War II, though, it was still just called a separation paper. But if you don't have those discharge papers, you can go to Federal Archives and get a free copy of it. I believe the website is archives.gov. You go to that website, you have to enter some information about the veteran, approximate dates of service and branch of service, and they will send you what they have on file for the veteran that shows their discharge dates. And if you don't have the discharge papers and you want to apply for this benefit, we're going to need to have a copy of those discharge papers. So I recommend that you go ahead and order a copy of the DD-214. Because of COVID, the Federal Archives got really behind in processing these requests, so it can take several months before you get one of those documents in the mail. So I recommend that you go ahead and order one of those. But also, it's important to look at those dates, because I've had families come to me and say, well, Dad served in the reserves. We don't qualify for the benefit. And I always tell them, well, let's look at the DD-214 and just check, because more than once have I had a situation in which it is true that Dad did serve he was in the reserves, but he was called up to active duty for a short period of time. And there have been instances where the family was eligible for benefits and they didn't know it. And, we wouldn't have known had we not looked at the DD-214. So that's a really important document that we need to look at. But for today's purposes, let's assume that you look at the DD-214, you know that you meet these dates. Now, again, you only had to serve one day during this time. So, if you were enlisted on January 31st, 1955, and then served, your 90 days or longer, you would meet this requirement, because one day there was a war going on. And so these days are really critical. So if you meet the wartime requirement and we've met the service test, then the next test that we need to look at are your assets. Remember, this pension is we've got to show the VA that we don't have enough money to sustain our medical expense costs long-term. And so with the asset test, there's lots of things on this slide. We've got to show that all of our assets are less than $138,489. I said all of our assets, all of our countable assets. So first of all, let's point out, $138,489 is a really exact number. This number changes every year and it goes up with inflation. So this was about 136,000 last year. It'll probably go up to 141,000 this next year. If you know anyone who applied or looked at the VA pension program prior to 2018, I highly encourage them to look at this again, because the program was completely overhauled. Back before 2018, you could only have up to around $80,000 in countable assets if you're single 40. And in October of 2018, the VA completely overhauled this program to make the rules more in line with the Medicaid rules. And so that's how this number came about. So we've got to show that we have less than 138,489 in countable assets. Now, countable is a key word, and that also comes from the Medicaid world. So if there's something that's countable, that means there's something that's not countable. So we'll go into that. But countable in the Medicaid and VA world, they say anything that you can readily turn into cash to pay for your care is countable. So examples of that are, your bank accounts, brokerage accounts, retirement accounts, IRAs, annuities, real estate other than your homestead, anything, life insurance proceeds, anything that you can readily turn into cash to pay for your care is countable. Now, VA and Medicaid, they don't care if it doesn't make sense to cash those in. You've got an IRA. If you cash in the IRA, you got to pay the tax. No one wants to do that. But if you can do it, then it's countable. So for VA purposes, that's how they determine what's countable and not countable. Now, so what's not countable? So the VA does not consider your homestead. They don't consider the value of your homestead. They don't consider a car. You're allowed to have a car. It doesn't matter if it's a Ford or a Ferrari. It doesn't matter. And your personal effects, your stuff in your house. So let's take an example. If you had, let's say, an $800,000 home and a car, but as long as you had less than $138,489 in the bank, you'd meet this test. So, a lot of people, they look at these numbers and, it doesn't make sense. But when you hear an example, you see it's, a lot of people who think may not qualify could, and it all just depends on what their assets are. Now, it's at this point in my presentation, if we were live and I was in front of you physically, this is where I start seeing the audience's eyes kind of glaze over. And I know I can't see y'all physically today in your eyes, but I'm sure some of you, you look at this number, 138.49, and say, I've got too much. I'm out. I'm done. I don't qualify. And so for you people, if you are out there listening today and you were one of those that said, I've got way more than that, please just bear with me, because I have some ideas and solutions that could help you get qualified and meet these requirements. So don't tune me out, and it's not a deal breaker if you don't meet this today. So just bear with me, please hold on. So let's keep going. So if you meet the asset test, then we've got one more test to go. This is the income test. Now, of all the tests out there, if you know anyone who's applied for the VA pension and been denied, I would say the majority of time, the reason why they're denied is because of this test right here. And it's because it's not, the VA doesn't explain it very well. And I'm not sure that they have any intention of explaining it very well. So we've got to show that the income that you receive from all sources, and when I say all sources, I mean your Social Security, any pension that you're receiving, required minimum distributions from your IRAs, even though you may get them once a year, we divide it by 12 to determine what the monthly amount is. All your income from all sources, if we can show that that is less than what you're paying in unreimbursed medical expenses, then you meet this test. Now, examples of unreimbursed medical expenses are expenses not covered by insurance. So for example, your health insurance premiums, and that would include if you have long-term care insurance and you hadn't turned the policy on to start paying out, if you're still paying premiums for that. So like if you're paying a supplemental insurance plan through Blue Cross Blue Shield and your premium is $300 a month, that's an unreimbursed medical expense. You're paying it out. So you've got $300 in unreimbursed medical expenses. Two unreimbursed medical expenses you already pay, and you don't even realize it, is Medicare Part B when you get your Social Security check each month, your Medicare Part B, which is $170.10 this year, is already taken out before it even hits your bank account. A lot of people don't know that. And also, if you're getting Medicare Part D, that's usually taken out before it hits your bank account. So you may already have some, I know you have some medical, unreimbursed medical already. So the question is, do we have enough that makes our unreimbursed medical higher than our income? Other examples of unreimbursed medical are wages paid to a caregiver. So if you've got a caregiver coming into the house, his or her wages each month, we can count that as unreimbursed medical. If you're in an assisted living facility, $5,500 a month that you're paying, that's unreimbursed medical. Same with skilled nursing costs. So just to give you an example, let's use some easy math here. So let's say that you've got $1,800 coming in Social Security a month, and you've got $200 in pension. So $2,000 a month total in income. And you're in an assisted living facility. You're paying $5,500 a month in assisted living care costs. Well, $5,500 is more than $2,000. So you're upside down and you meet this test. Now, the income test, if you are married, it counts both of your incomes, not just the veteran's income. It's the entire household's income that's counted. So we've got to show with all income coming in the house that unreimbursed medical expenses paid are higher than our income. So if you meet this test without any assistance needed to get you to these levels, then you're entitled to the base pension amount. So, and that's in blue down here. It's the one on the bottom, which is $18,320 a year for a married couple, which comes out to be about $1,610 a month, which is great. I'd love to have an extra $1610 come into my bank account every month. But most families, when they're coming to me, if we're going to try to get the VA pension, we want to get the maximum amount that's available. And the maximum amount is, you'll see in red, that's called aid and attendance. And you'll see annually that you can get $29,175 or $2,431 monthly. Now, these numbers also are adjusted for inflation, so they'll go up again next year. But if you are eligible for $18,320 at the base level, what can we do to get up to the $29,175 level for aid and attendance? Well, there's one other test that we've got to pass, and that is what I call a health test. We've got to show the VA that we need assistance with at least 2 activities of daily living. Now that's activities of daily living are a coin term that comes from the healthcare world, and that's dressing, bathing, standing and walking. That's getting up from a seated position, walking across the room without assistance. Eating, that's hand to mouth, and then toileting, incontinence issues. And if we can show the VA that we need help with at least 2 of these activities of daily living, then we can get the aid and attendance amount if we meet all the other tests. And I am amazed by a lot of my families looking to get this benefit that they look at this list and they say, oh, I don't need help with any of that. And I will tell you, rarely have I found someone who said they didn't meet these tests, that they really didn't meet these tests. Now, if you don't, that's great. That's wonderful news. But I have found for a lot of the clients, the VA has accepted help with activities of daily living in ways that you may not expect. For example, let's talk about bathing for a second. If you are in a shower and you've got bars in the shower or a stool that you sit on, I could argue that if you hold on to those railings or you sit down because you're a fall risk, you get dizzy, you're afraid you're going to slip, that's assistance with bathing. And I have seen instances where the VA accepted that argument. So you got to think outside the box here. You know, standing and walking. If you use a cane or a walker, or you need to hold on to someone else for balance, you can't walk far. You know, that meets that requirement. And this is not an exhaustive list. If you got dementia that causes you to get confused, and we can show that you needed a protected environment, then that'll meet this test. If you got bad eyesight, it's not an exhaustive list, is what I'm trying to say. If you've got arthritis and you can't tie your shoelaces, well, that's a fall risk, and I can show that you need assistance with bathing. So as long as all this is substantiated by a doctor's letter, a lot of times, we can easily show that we need assistance with daily living. Now, this doesn't mean that you need assistance all the time, that you can't do these things on your own, but given the opportunity, you would benefit from having some help doing these things. So I had a lovely lady come in, and she was on a walker, and I asked her if she could what activities of daily living could she not perform, and we got specifically to standing and walking, and she goes, "Oh, I'm fine with that." And I was thinking, she was on a walker, but she's fine on a walker. And I said, well, but that's the point, you meet that requirement because you were on a walker. And so even though you may do these things well, if you need any assistance, we can meet the health test. And if you meet the health test, then we can get this higher level of pension, which is, like I said, the $29,175 tax-free money for the rest of your life if you are married. Now, if you're single, it's just a little bit less, $24,610, which comes out to be about $2,050 a month. Now, this slide, these numbers are also very important. If you are already receiving compensation, disability compensation, because you do have an injury that relates back to your time in service, a lot of times it's worth looking at these numbers, because if you were rated, say, 50% or lower, if you could make more getting aid and attendance, the VA pension, sometimes it makes sense to switch programs. Now, unfortunately, you can't get both. You can't get disability compensation and VA pension. You got to pick one road or the other. But if you're getting 10, 15, 20% disability, you're getting $400 or $500 a month in compensation. If I can show that you need aid and attendance, you could get $2,050 a month instead of $500. So wouldn't it make sense to switch? So, and you don't lose any of your healthcare benefits or when you do that, if you're on TRICARE. So a lot of times, if you know anyone who's receiving compensation now, which is the disability compensation, find out what they're rated, because if they're a lot of times 50% or lower, they can receive more under this other program. Now, this benefit is also available for surviving spouse of a veteran, and their eligibility test is very similar. The deceased veteran had to meet all the same service requirements as stated previously, and they had to be married to the veteran at the time of the veteran's death and not remarried. Now, the spouse did not have to be married to the veteran at the time the veteran served during the military. That's important. They did not have to be married to them at that time, but they were the last spouse married to them when they died. Sometimes I'm helping families where this is spouse number 3 or spouse number 4, and it doesn't matter how many times a veteran was married, or or spouse, surviving spouse was married, just as long as the last spouse that they were married to meets the veteran requirements, then they'll be eligible for this pension as long as they meet the asset and income test. So, and you can see here, if we can get aid and attendance, that's $1,318 a month, or $15,816 annually, which can be very helpful. I mean, this extra income can be just like a game changer for so many of my families. You know, the extra income allows them to stay home longer, to receive, better care, and just take some of the stress off of knowing that you're going to have an extra 1,318 coming in every month. And so I've had so many families that they don't know about this benefit. And when I tell them that they can get this, a lot of times, first of all, the first response is they don't believe me. And then, but once we get it, they're believers for life. And, my job is to share this information because it's there, and it's there to help veterans and their spouses, and you should take advantage of it if you can. So those are the rules. So what happens if you do not qualify? What if you don't have any health issues? If you don't have any health issues and there's nothing that we can show with a doctor's letter that shows that you need help with activities of daily living, then, well, first of all, that's wonderful news. That's great news. That means that you're in good health. And so that's nothing to be upset about. But what it does mean is that we can just make sure and position your assets so that when your health declines, that your assets and your income are positioned so that you can get the benefit as soon as possible. So if no health issues, okay, but let's just make sure that we're ready with the other tests so that when health declines, we can meet this. Now, what if you have too much income? Well, it depends on how much income you have, and can we stop the income? I had a lady that she was working a little part-time job just because she was bored, and she was getting about $500 a year. So she got 1099 for $500 a year, and she had too much income compared to her unreimbursed medical. But we discovered if she quit her job and didn't get that $500, then she would meet the income test. So in her circumstance, it made sense for her to quit her job because then she made more income by just going under the VA pension. So we got to look at what the income is. Is it stoppable? Does it make sense to stop it? And if it doesn't make sense to stop it, then maybe we just increase our unreimbursed medical expenses. Depending on how close we are, the differential between the income and the unreimbursed medical. If we're not that far off, sometimes it may make sense just to change insurance policies, change our healthcare insurance, get more coverage, pay a little bit higher premium so that we do meet that requirement. For a lot of families, if you have the right situation, if you've got, this is a scenario I get a lot. If you've got husband and wife, mom and dad, one's a veteran, living at home, they're getting older in age, they're starting to need a little help, some oversight, and they've got their kids close by. And kids are coming in and they're checking on mom and dad, they're taking them to their doctor's appointments, they're separating their medication, making sure that they're safe, going to the grocery store for them. They're doing all these things for them out of love and affection, but they're checking in on mom and dad just to make sure that they're doing okay. We can pay our child for their oversight as a caregiver. So what they're doing out of love and affection, we can pay them as a caregiver and create an unreimbursed medical expense, perhaps where none existed before, by paying them to take on the responsibility of managing our care. So a lot of times we can create some unreimbursed medical expenses where none existed. And so that's a way to then create, increase our unreimbursed medical. Now, maybe you have too many assets. This is where I was telling you earlier, if your eyes glazed over because you have more than 138,489, this is where there's some things that we may be able to do. So it all depends on how much more you have than the number for the year. This year, like I said, is 138,489. I may have said that wrong earlier, so I apologize. So 138,489. If you have, say, $20,000, $30,000 more, maybe we just start paying off your debt. If you've got some credit card debt, you still have a mortgage, maybe we pay off all your debt, and that'll get your numbers down. Perhaps you've always needed to do some remodeling in the home. We need to, open some doors or remodel the bathroom to make it easier as you get older to maneuver in your home. Put in a walk-in bath, or lower cabinets, or wheelchair accessible ramps, things that we can do to improve the home that need to be done, and that would get us down within the asset limits. Now, we could also buy some exempt assets. Like I said, a car is exempt. So if you've got an older car, maybe we just buy a newer car. We trade in that Ford for a Lexus. You can have any type of car, but maybe we find one that's more easily accessible to get in and out of, something that's more reliable. So we could purchase a car, and that would lower our asset value. We prepay for our burial expenses. We're going to need that anyway at some point. Let's go ahead and pay for it, and that would get us down. So there's lots of things that we can do. Now, if you are over the asset limit by a large percentage, if you've got an $800,000, $900,000 estate, not counting your house and car and personal effects, or more, we're definitely not going to be spending down in order to get this benefit. But what we can do, we can take majority of those assets, if you're not using them, and move them out of your estate. And then VA has a 3-year look back period. So the way the VA works is when you apply for VA, if you gift anything away, they want to know about it if it happened within 3 years of submitting your application. So if we're strategic about it, we can take the overage of what you're wanting to protect and move it. And we just know we're not going to apply for benefits until after 3 years have passed. So when we apply for benefits, legitimately, we can say, have you made any gifts within 3 years? Nope. 3 years and 10 days, 3 years and 10 days? Yes, but VA doesn't look that far back. They only look back 3 years. So it's a way to take a good portion of your assets and get them out of your estate so that you could then become eligible for these benefits in 3 years. Now, there's a couple ways you can do it. Now, the word on the street is you take these assets, you just give them to your kids. Just give them to the kids. And then wait 3 years. The problem with that, and I hate that strategy, is because if you just give it to the kids, they could lose it. They don't mean to lose it, but they put it in their bank account. Tragedy happens, they go through a divorce, they're in a car wreck, they got bankruptcy issues, anything that is in their name, they've now lost for themselves, and then they've also lost it for you. So if you're going to look at a gifting strategy, the best way I think that you can gift is to gift to an asset protection trust. And what we do is we take those assets, we gift it to a trust. Your kids can be in charge of it, but because it's in a trust, they can't lose it because they don't own it. They're just managing it. And so you can move these assets, protect them. Moving them to a trust also acts as an estate planning tool. So if you were looking to update your estate planning, by moving these assets into this trust, we can avoid probate. should either one of you pass. You can also write instructions in this trust to where if something happened to either one of you, when it goes to your kids, you can make sure that the kids get to keep the money. So if anything bad goes on in their life, then when they inherit, divorce, creditors, bankruptcy issues, they get to keep the money. So you can structure this in a way that it can accomplish a lot of your estate planning objectives, but also by moving it. And if we can wait 3 years before applying for VA, when we do apply for VA, we can show and legitimately show the only thing we have in our, our accounts and our names is under that 138,489. And it's just a way to position and protect. And that's what we do. If you want to find out more about that, then I can talk to you about that specifically and how it will work with your family. Now, finally, if you don't have any wartime service, if there's absolutely, we look at the DD 214, you served during a time, that weird time period between Korea and Vietnam, we just don't meet the wartime requirement, or there was no active duty, you were just in the reserves, then that's okay. Unfortunately, the VA pension is not going to be available for us. We are not going to be able to use it and apply for it. However, that doesn't mean that there is no long-term care planning that cannot be done. We can take your assets and we can still perhaps move them to this asset protection trust. And as long as you wait 5 years, you could then apply for Medicaid. So even though we can't apply for VA, we might can position you to apply for Medicaid down the road, because Medicaid has a 5-year look back, not a 3. So, there are some things that we can do. VA is not the option, but we can still plan for your long-term care. And now, before I go on, I had to give you a disclaimer that nothing I just said can be taken as legal advice without a consultation. I don't want you to leave here today and say, I talked to this or heard this attorney, Marcy, say all I had to do was go buy a car and I can get VA benefits. I did not say that. So without a consultation. So nothing I say can be taken today as legal advice. But if you would like to find out, if any of this makes sense for you and your family, I would be more than happy to talk with you and see. And as a thank you for sitting through this workshop with me today. I mean, you've already been educated in a lot of ways. I offer a free consultation. So if you want to call our office, you are more than welcome to, and just say that you watched, you were part of my webinar presentation, and that you'd like to find out if the VA benefit makes sense for you and your family, and what, if anything, needs to be done to help you get eligible for that program. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. So at this point, I encourage you, if you want to learn more or want to go back and study some of those numbers, download my book. Like I said, it's a free download, and it's full of pictures. There's not a lot of writing, so it shouldn't take you very long to go over it, but it goes over everything we talked about today. And I just encourage you to share this information with your loved ones and family members, friends, because this money is a game changer. And I want to get the word out, because I've just seen the impact it has on so many people's lives. And so I would love the opportunity to work with you and your family. And I just thank you so much for your time. Call us and let's talk. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks again.